I'm not the main speaker tonight, but I'm going to introduce a good friend of mine. Since '94, he has been kind of coming along every step of the way, educating, teaching, sharing his wealth of knowledge that we've been really proud to have him, and then traveled, Hawaii, different part of the country. Did you ever go to Mexico too?
Back to Hawaii? When are we going?
Yeah, funny story that we have maybe 50 of us in Hawaii having, teach us, exercise, and a really nice day, and we got a hotel just next to the ocean, and people still talk about how hard exercise they have us all do.
Oh, that's right. I remember that
but
now.
He's, great friends of ours, great friends of Impact's family. You've been all appreciating his knowledge, and tremendous knowledge, up to date as we speak, and he just on a weekly basis interview exceptional people in nutrition and medicine and all these years. So what you are in treat for his just information tonight, and then not only that, good friends of mine, but also incredible human being as a person. What a contribution he made in health and nutrition over the years. So please put your hands together and then welcome Cary Nosler.
Thank you, Gregory. Thank you. And the reason I'm here is because of this guy, too. He's a fantastic individual. And just want to clarify something. He said, since 1994, not that I am 94. Might look like it, but I ain't 94.
You look good for 94.
Yeah, good for 94. Maybe that's the key.
Yeah.
But I got to tell you, this sounds kind of funny, but there was a fellow named Paul Bragg, who a long time ago was one of the big gurus in the whole health movement, and he used to say that he was like 90 some years old. And I found out later that he was adding about 20 years to his supposed age, and he really wasn't anywhere near 94 when he was doing all this stuff. So hopefully no subterfuge here tonight in terms of what we are and what we're doing. And I will say one other thing about that Hawaii trip. What I learned, we went out to this island where it's a refuge for birds and fish and such. They had a boat that took us out there, and they had all these sandwiches that you made. If you're going snorkeling, I would advise in the ocean not eating several sandwiches before you get out there, as it was a bit of an upsetting event to be in there looking down at this fish. So that was a drag. Well, tonight, this is what I'll call our potpourri information night, different ideas and information that hopefully you might that you might find interesting and applicable in your life. Like Greg said, it's just, there's so many things happening and going on now in the nutrition field, the health field, that it's not necessarily that you aren't going to get anywhere if you haven't been keeping up, but it's just so many new things that you can entertain in terms of things that you can do. But we'll just start on a general level. If I told you, statistically, I could guarantee you another 15 to 20 years of life by just following 5 habits. You might say, wow, that's a bargain. Well, that's what the study said, and the habits encompass everything that I hope that we all are doing now. If you, for example, eat healthy food, exercise regularly, don't smoke, drink moderately, and get adequate sleep, you have a 15 to 20 year advantage over people who don't do those things, just by following different types of lifestyle habits. But if you look at those habits, they encompass, again, everything that we're talking about here. For example, healthy eating. That's a big concept, and especially today we're all trying to figure out which diet should I follow. Should I go on the Mediterranean diet? Should I go on a keto diet? Should I go on the paleo diet? Should I be a vegetarian? Should I be a vegan? Whatever it is, there's a lot of things involved in that, but the basic program is still going to be the same. Healthy, unprocessed foods, whichever program that you happen to pick. Foods that are high in natural phytonutrients and high in beneficial fibers that do all the kinds of things inside your body to nourish your good bacteria. And all the research is so plain today. Who you are is dependent on what's going on in your gut. Even your mental attitude, everything, because the intestine is hooked up to the brain via something called the vagus nerve. And so literally, how you feel, how you react, how your immune system is functioning, how you process the events of your life depend upon the good bacteria in your gut. And it has always been that way. We're finding out now that the deficiency of the good bacteria probably is responsible for allergies, for inflammation, for cancer, for arthritis, you name it. But that's where the basic information has to begin. And when you eat fiber, fiber does two things. Some fiber goes through your system, picks up water, bulks up, so that we can eliminate the food better. But what's interesting is what they call the soluble fiber. Soluble fiber, like you get in oats, for example, or beans, along with some insoluble fiber, that goes into the intestine and it serves as food for the good bacteria. You have to have fiber in order to have a healthy ecosystem in your body. You can't just take a probiotic and expect it to grow if you don't feed it. So that becomes a prebiotic. And what happens is, when it's being digested by the good bacteria, it forms something called short-chain fatty acids. And the whole health of your intestinal system, maybe even a propensity to colon cancer or any kind of those difficulties, results from a lack of short-chain fatty acids. And they can be burned preferentially for energy. Certain foods that are so-called keto type foods, what they're doing is producing these short-chain fatty acids so that you can have more energy, more activity, and a healthier colon. Saw a fascinating show on Channel 6 the other night where they were discussing the whole idea of the good bacteria, and they had this one woman who had been suffering from some kind of a acute immune deficiency for years. And what they did was give her a fecal implant, where they cooked the fecal matter from a healthy person. They processed it, obviously. They put it in capsules. She took 30 capsules, and it turned her whole condition around. It changed her whole body. It changed her immune system. And if you look at it, every surface of your body is covered with bacteria. That's the hallmark of what's going on. We first heard about it maybe, when they talked about hair, having the pH of the shampoo right around your skin. Well, it's not just the outside, it's your mouth, your ears, eyes, nose, small intestine, large intestine. All of those areas are covered with bacteria. And in fact, the bacteria, which is not you, it's not you, it was brought into you, there's more of that in your body than there is you. You are actually more of a bacteria than you are whatever you are. That's how much of it there is in the body. And there are thousands of beneficial bacteria in the intestinal tract, which is why eating a varied diet with varied sources of fiber is so important. Because what we've done with probiotics in the past, we would look for one strain. And they'd isolate it and they'd say, okay, here's what this did. But there's not just one strain in your intestinal tract. You need many, many different strains in order to function as a healthy person. One of them might help you, but in terms of how you're going to fare long term, you have to keep that intestinal tract, your microbiome is what they call it, you have to keep that functioning properly. And believe me, every week there's some new study on some aspect of our being that is affected by the good bacteria. So very critical in terms of a good diet, good fiber. I might add also, well, I'll get to that in the next one, that healthy eating, we know about the exercise. You have to exercise regularly. You have to use your body for the purpose that it was originally developed, which was to reproduce, to defend yourself against something that's trying to keep you from doing that or existing, and to help you get food. I mean, that's why you have muscles. We just go to a refrigerator now. It doesn't take a lot of work to walk a couple of steps and take out what you want. But in the past, you got up, you want to eat, you better get your rear end out there and pick plants and vegetables. And incidentally, we talk about eating 3 to 5 servings of fruits and vegetables. Our hunter-gatherer ancestors ate between 50 and 100 different plant foods. Anything they could find, they took. Talk about getting your share of phytochemicals. They got a whole bunch, as well as animal protein. And I know a lot of folks don't like to hear that, who don't eat meat, but the bottom line is you are a carnivore or omnivore so that you could eat anything so that we could survive. A lot of the early species of big land animals went extinct because we ate them into extinction. Nowadays, of course, you don't need to if you have a varied source of plant material. So the basis of a good diet is a diet that is predominantly plant-based with animal protein as an auxiliary, from whichever you choose to eat and however you choose to eat it. So we got our diet, we got exercise, we know about smoking. Doesn't take a genius to think about that. When it comes to alcohol, I say moderation, that's even changing. They're finding that women maybe more than 1 glass of something a day might not be good. You know, it's kind of changing in terms of how much you can consume, but it is still true that moderate amounts of alcohol figure into a longevity program if you choose to do it. You know, I have no desire to do it. I don't have a qualm about it one way or another philosophically. It just doesn't seem to fit in to my program. When it comes to sleep, you all know how important that is. And we know that today, we are obviously sleeping much less than our ancestors used to. We spent many more hours in darkness in the past. And then you bring in what I call the hormone cycle of life. At nighttime, you were in darkness, or even a campfire that was a low blue light provider, so it didn't stop the production of melatonin. Melatonin is not just a hormone that's involved in adjusting circadian rhythm, adjusting to light and dark. When it got dark, we'd start producing melatonin so that we could not only go to sleep, but it turns out melatonin is one of the most important antioxidants in the body. So why do we need that kind of antioxidant activity at night? You're repairing. The body's going through the cycle of taking care of the insults that may have occurred during the day. So that's a critical element. And if you are on your laptop or looking at the phone or watching television or having regular light, bright light on in the room at night, you're not producing melatonin. So the World Health Organization classifies light that's not low blue light as a type 3 carcinogen, because people who are exposed to light more at night develop more cancers. So it's a very difficult. People have to work night shift, have much worse health outcomes than people who have to work in the daytime and can sleep more at night. So if you're going to watch television, get yourself some blue blocker glasses. For instance, if you're on Amazon, you know, just go on there, you'll find them. I found a pair for under $10. When you put them on, it filters out the blue light so that it doesn't stop the production of melatonin. Or you can get light bulbs that are low blue light producers that have on at night to do the same thing. So even getting up, if you have a bright light in the bathroom and you get up at night and that bright light hits your eyes, you stop melatonin. It's almost like that. Why? Because light meant we had to defend ourselves. Hunter-gatherer times when it's light, now you can't, be hiding away. You got to be ready to go, have some kind of activity. So the body will just stop that production if you give it some type of light impulse that is contrary to the production of melatonin. During the daytime, now we were supposed to be outside. We were supposed to be outside. We were supposed to be getting some sunlight on our skin to produce what? Vitamin D. Guess what? Vitamin D isn't a vitamin. It's a hormone. So you have the hormone, vitamin D in the morning, which is involved in all the immune functions. Just about everything that you can find today that causes disruption in your immune system is usually preceded by low vitamin D levels. Get yourself a test. It's cheap. You can even go on, there's a company called Vitamin D Council where they have really good information. You can buy a home kit for like $50 or $60. You can take it at home, mail in the results, and find out what your levels are. And then you can be better in terms of adjusting your intake, either through the sun or through supplementation to get it up to 40, 50, 60, somewhere in that area. Talked to a lady last week who has lupus and was very low on vitamin D and started supplementing. She has to get it up into the 60s in order to have the symptom relief from her lupus. So it's going to be individual, and different people absorb it differently. The more fat you have on your body, the less efficient you are at producing vitamin D. If you go out and get, what is that pounding? Our fitness center?
Yeah, fitness center.
Okay, well,
We never know what.
at least they're being healthy, you know. So.
It fits in with your talk.
Yes. So if you go outside and get some sunlight, do not come right in and take a shower. Because you're producing a type of oil on the skin that's involved in the production of the vitamin D. So you want to keep the skin unwashed for at least a couple hours after you do that, or you're going to lose the advantage. And again, if you're using sunscreen during the day, you're outside, you're not making any vitamin D. You're by a window. The window is filtering out the rays that make vitamin D. The most efficient way to do it, if you can, is called the shadow test. When you stand, if the shadow that your body makes from where the sun is at that particular time is shorter than your body is long, you're making vitamin D at a fast rate. Doesn't mean you won't other times of the day, but 5-10 minutes at that, and you've got it for the day. And the difference between the vitamin D from the sun and a tablet is that you can theoretically take more as a supplement than your body. No matter what your body produces with the sun, it's non-toxic. The body will get rid of whatever it doesn't need. So maybe a combination of both, if you don't get out that much, would be a good idea. Now, when we do all those kind of things, get our habits in order, and then we also look at the way people live around the world. Some of you might have been aware of the work the National Geographic is doing with what they call the blue zones. And they look for areas of the world, certain pockets, where the people just live exceptionally well. Low rates of heart disease, low rates of dementia, longer lifespans, all those kind of things. There's one in Greece, one in Italy, one in somewhere maybe Ecuador, I'm not sure. Seventh-day Adventists figured in there as well. And they find that these people are exceptionally healthy. They don't all eat the same things. For example, in Okinawa. In Okinawa, they don't use dairy products to speak of. In Greece and Italy, they do. But again, what's common is they're still using a lot of plant-based foods to go with whatever they're eating. And they have a certain cultural ambiance that does contribute to their sense of well-being, their sense of belonging, and to family. So, that's a critical area. But when you look at those areas, there are 5 foods, even with the differences in dairy, that are common to all of those areas of the world in terms of the benefits they're getting. 1, they're all eating some kind of greens. Different areas of the world, Cary, which is in Greece, they eat 50 different kinds of wild greens. They pick them all the time. You don't have to do that. But having a variety is a hallmark of all the healthy eating patterns around the world, part of our plant-based food program. Whole grains figure into it, depending on where you are. And again, different ones for different regions of the world. I don't do well on grains, but I do well on sourdough rye bread, for example. So you've kind of figure out which ones work well for you. They're not only a good source of phytonutrients, but the fiber that we're talking about is very abundant in the whole grains. And then beans. Every culture uses beans, legumes of some kind or another, wherever you happen to be. One of the interesting ones that I was doing research on last week were black beans. Black beans have the same anthocyanidin content more than blueberries, which are considered so high in immune functions and antioxidants. Black beans are higher So the darker the pigment, all beans are good because they've got a good fiber, they've got soluble fiber, they've got insoluble fiber. They're very, very good that way. But the darker the color, the more pigmentation in any food that you eat, the more of those phytochemicals, phytonutrients that you're bringing into the body that act in terms of the bioflavonoid content of the food. So that would be very important. There was a discussion, especially amongst the paleo people, that black beans, again, were not paleo because our hunter-gatherer ancestors didn't eat them. That's true. But they still serve us well today if you cook them right, especially. You've got to soak them, you've got to get rid of the phytates. These are kind of anti-nutrients that can block up minerals. So if you soak them right, cook them right, they're fine to eat, and again, a very, very good source of carbohydrates. But they figure into that whole blue zone equation. And then we look at onions. And just like I said, every culture utilizes onions. It's one of the best sources of quercetin. Quercetin is an extremely important immune enhancer. Something that helps the system operate at a higher level of efficiency. And especially, and again, just like we talked about the black beans, red onions better than white onions. The color, again, influences what's going on. So some type of an onion figures into the whole equation. And then we look at mushrooms. Mushrooms are universally used across the world. Why? Again, because they're available. You can pick them just about anywhere. Obviously, you got to know which ones to pick. But once you figure that out, they contain beta-glucan. And these are very, very important immune function substances and are, if you look at, just type a search in any of the search, you'd like Google Scholar or go to pubmed.gov and type in mushrooms and cancer. You see all kinds of things on mushrooms and cancer and mushrooms and immune function. So it's very, very, very critical. So again, our greens, grains, onions, mushrooms, legumes, those are some of the foods that we probably should include on a daily basis along with whatever else that we're taking in at that time. Now, this is a neat little trick that I just saw. We're all interested in losing weight, right? So what if you could lose some weight in the right way just by eating everything that you're eating now, but eating it in a certain order? So if you adjust the calories, you adjust all the other macronutrients, the protein, fat, and carbohydrate, but just change the way you're eating that meal, it makes a difference in how your body processes the food because it probably affects the blood sugar control. So let's say you got some protein, whatever it happens to be in your food. If you're a vegetarian, that's maybe going to be mostly beans and grains, right? Or if it's not, you've got whatever, your chicken, your fish, turkey, all those kinds of things. And then you have starchy vegetables. Any kind of good vegetable, fibrous vegetables. Let's say you've got all the cruciferous vegetables. You've got your broccoli, you got your cauliflower, maybe some Brussels sprouts, whatever it happens to be, or you got your other types of greens. You would eat either the carbohydrate or the starchy immune food first, or your protein food first. Or you could do the protein and the starch, the fiber together if you want. But let's just say rather than just picking this and this and this, you start with your protein, which I like because you have the digestive strength when you first start to eat. You've got more of the hydrochloric acid there waiting to take care of whatever you're putting in. So you take your protein food first, then you eat your veggies, eat your broccoli, and then you have your beans or your grains or your sweet potatoes or whatever it happens to be. Do that, the same calories as opposed to just eating randomly, and you'll lose some weight. It was a fascinating study, and again, they think it's because you get better glycemic control by eating the carbs at the end of the meal. Now, if you do that and you take our product to help you with the MPX 100, you've got a double whammy. You've got a double benefit. You're naturally lowering the glycemic index. naturally improving the way the body uses insulin, and at the same time getting the benefit from all the different things that you have in your MPX 100. That would be a really, really good, a good way to go things. Now, along with that, again, I've mentioned this before, and this was part of the healthy habits in terms of exercise. This group, you and I, except for this fellow here, he's just a young whippersnapper. We all are concerned with a situation where every decade of our life, after 40, results in a certain loss of muscle. Muscle is functionality. Muscle is digestive ability. Muscle is mobility. Everything that deals with the way you would like to age is involved with muscle. With metabolism, maintaining the proper weight is much easier the more muscle that you have on your body. Muscle burns more calories at rest than fat does. So even though you may not burn as many calories doing a strength training exercise, you'll get an afterburn because of the activity that you did, plus adding the muscle will also improve what's going on. Muscle is critical for your brain. It's critical for maintaining your body temperature as you age. If you notice that when it gets to be cold, you're less tolerant as you get older, part of the reason why is because you're not creating as much heat. You don't burn the body fat that you're stored at night. It'd be nice if you did, but we don't. So you're going to have the energy that come from the protein metabolism to keep you warm and comfortable. So what do we do about that? Well, we can do anything that results in a stress on the muscle. You run fast down to first base after whatever you've done. You're using muscle. You're moving the body. You know, you pick up shopping bags. You're using muscle, you know, whatever it happens to be. Unfortunately, we are comforting ourselves to death. Everything we're doing now is to get somebody to do something for you. Now as a kid, we all mowed our own lawn. You'd hear on the weekends, you'd hear the now you buy someone else to do it. You know, and it's hard to wash your car, get someone else to wash your car. You don't have to do that. You know, and I understand that. I mean, there's things that just aren't as fun to do as you'd like. But the bottom line is, the more we do that, the less we use our body, the less we use our muscles, the more pronounced the effects of aging become. If it gets to the point where you have lost so much muscle that you really have a difficult time even standing up on your own, which you can see some people, they sit down and they have a hard time getting up. Now you've got a full-blown condition called sarcopenia. That's age-related loss of muscle and strength. You want to keep that up with weight training. Weight training or resistance training. Doesn't have to be weight. You could use body weight. You can use, you know, anything that you can find that makes you have to do something against that weight. Something like that. It's just more convenient to go to a gym and use the weight training equipment because you can get things done faster. And you work the bigger muscles of the body. Hopefully you find someone who can give you an idea what to do. I go to a gym and I just feel sad when I see, again, older folks come in the gym and not knowing anything of what they're supposed to be doing and doing stuff that's not doing them any good. So a little knowledge on that end would really serve you well. But what would also go with that strength training are ENA products, because now you're balancing the hormones. Because one of the reasons why you're losing muscle is because your hormones are declining. And guys and girls, but guys especially, we're losing our testosterone. And it's a nice little thing here because intense exercise builds up testosterone. It keeps it functioning better. But we've got lots of other hormones that are being depleted because of stress and because of some kind of situation where you have an imbalance in the body. So strength training and ENA, our creams, day and night cream, would really be a good prescription, a good way to try to keep that muscle on your body or even add it. And remember, as you get older, you can still add muscle. You can still do it. It won't be as easy as it was before, but it'll still happen. And they've done some remarkable studies with 80 and 90-year-old people, put them on a strength training program and have them add muscle, you know, even at those advanced stages. So maintain your hormones, do the strength training, and if you're there, walking, some type of aerobic activity would obviously complement that, or stretching, or whatever you happen to do. Another little tip, I'll kind of close with this. We know that carbohydrates are a double-edged sword. We need carbohydrates for the glycogen. It fuels the body. When you exercise intensely, you have a lack of glycogen. You have to have the glycogen storage, which is why they say after a workout to have some carbohydrate or something that can help to replenish that. The double-edged sword is we eat too many carbohydrates in a processed form that upsets our whole glycemic balance, our insulin production. When you eat carbohydrates, the body secretes insulin to compensate for the material, the carbohydrate, the sugar that you're eating, to put it to the cells for energy. If you have all you need for energy and you're still eating more than you should, you're going to store it as fat. Not only that, and when you do that, and you have a high level of carbohydrates, what they call the post-prandial glucose, meaning after you've done eating, when you have the secretion of insulin, it should come down in a short period of time because you haven't overloaded it with all kinds of carbs in that meal. If it stays high for a long time and over a period of months and years, then you start having problems with that insulin being accepted into the cells. The little key there to get it in gets disturbed and you have insulin resistance, and then type 2 diabetes. Our endoprime is especially good for keeping the glycemic balance, but again, if you're drinking lots of fruit juice, which is a no-no, believe me, maybe one glass is fine, but if you're eating, 2 or 3 glasses of orange juice or have an apple juice or any of those kind of things, you're messing with the whole body's regulatory system. But if you eat your carbs in moderation, the endoprime, MPX 100, now you've got a good balance on the whole blood sugar issue that's going on in the body. But there are other little tricks that you can do with carbohydrate production that will lower the amount of calories you will absorb from those carbohydrates. To wit, you're cooking rice. Well, even if it's white rice, you know that it's going to get in the system pretty quick. It's metabolized as carbohydrate, starch, and then to sugar. When you're boiling the water, add a tablespoon of coconut oil to the water. Cook your rice. After it's done, put it in the refrigerator overnight. Then you can take it out and reheat it again. But what you've done, you've coated it with this light coat of oil, and you've changed the starch composition so that it becomes resistant starch and you don't absorb as much. So taking that same rice dish, you'll get 30 to 40% less of those carbohydrates. You'll still get some of the energy, some of the taste, but you won't get the excess carbohydrates and the insulin and the sugar and all the fat and everything that can come from it. Now you can do the same thing with pasta. They've shown that eating pasta is not necessarily going to cause you to gain weight. But again, what would you do? Cook it with some oil, like most people do, and they're cooking spaghetti, or Italians I know that do it. Cook it, put it in the refrigerator. When you take it out again, you can heat it. And again, you've knocked it down by 30 to 40%, and you can eat your pasta, and not have all the different kinds of problems. When you cook potatoes, for example, cook your potatoes, you change the carbohydrate now. It's sugar right after they're cooked. But if you refrigerate the potato, now you're reforming that sugar into starch, into resistant starch. And again, when you eat it, you'll absorb less. So learn how to eat your carbohydrates, cook them, cool them, and then reheat them, and you'll absorb less. And I might add again that the whole carbohydrate thing with the resistant starch, what does resistant starch do? It feeds your good bacteria. It produces those short-chain fatty acids that we were talking about. It's not going to be, they call it resistant because it's resisting digestion until it gets into the intestinal tract. So you can keep that blood sugar in control, you can have the good flavor, get the nutrition you need without the excess calories. All those kind of things. Works good. All right. Any questions on our potpourri of information, as I said? Yes, sir.
You talked about soluble, called fibers.
Fiber?
What's the implication of insoluble fibers?
Insoluble, again, will attract water. So like wheat bran is mostly insoluble. So when you take that, it bulks up the stool so that it can press against the sides of the colon and initiate peristaltic activity, the wave-like activity that helps to move the stuff out of the body. Whereas soluble fiber, again, will be broken down into these short-chain fatty acids and used for a different purpose. But sometimes foods will have both some soluble and some insoluble. Beans, again, are mostly soluble, but they also have some insoluble fiber. So getting a balance is the whole key. Balance is the whole key. Yes, ma'am?
The beans, the canned beans.
Yeah, they're fine. I think they're fine. I've used both, and I don't know it's any big difference.
Easier.
Pardon?
Oh, canned beans. Okay,
Yeah.
got it.
And if you have a pressure cooker, that's almost the easiest way of all. You can cook your beans in 30 minutes, you know, and it'll get rid of all the phytates and save a lot of money. You know, it's pretty cheap. Pretty cheap. Yeah, well, use your pressure cooker and cook the beans. You know, it'll do really, really well.
The raw beans.
Yes. Maybe so, and you don't even have to soak them in the pressure cooker.
Yeah,
Yeah, just put them in there and let them rip.
even the bone you get.
Yes, and adding bones to your food is even better because now you're getting the collagen. You're getting the kinds of material that...
And the taste.
And the taste, yes. And most of the cultures that use a bone broth, you know, it's because it's very important. Again, we've forgotten the past. I mean, and I'm no, you know, exclusion to this rule either. I like muscle meats. But your ancestors ate the whole doggone thing.
Yeah.
They ate the tongue, the eyes, the ears, the feet, the tail, everything you could eat. Why? Because they didn't have the advantage of being able to just selectively get cuts of meat. They had to eat and live.
Yeah.
You
Why
know?
waste it?
Well, exactly. Why waste anything? They used the hide to make their clothes, to make shoes. They ate the insides, whatever the heck it was available.
Yeah.
Now again, we have a different food supply. So you can be a vegan and do it very healthily because you have a wider variety of foods to choose from. But again, 80-90% plant-based foods, 10 to 20% animal-based foods, there's no indication that that's going to be any less healthy than 100%. Unless you've got a real major problem, you got some heart disease, you got diabetes or things, and you need an adjustment period to let the body kind of go through what it needs to go through to heal itself, then that makes sense. And then the quantity, the quality, not just the quantity, but the quality of your food makes a big difference, folks. How that, you've seen the prescription for how to get animals fat. Put them in a pen where they can't move much and give them a lot of grain. Now, who does that? Most people every day. You don't move, you stuff your mouth with carbohydrate foods, what's going to happen? You're going to be just like those cattle in the finishing lot. It only takes them 30 days to put on extra fat. You know, well, just think about us doing it for decades. You know, quality meat, what's an animal supposed to do when they're out in the wild? They chew, they eat grass. I mean, the ones that do, the other ones eat those animals that are eating the grass. But let's just say you happen to be one that's eating the grass. That's what their natural food is. They were never meant to eat soybeans. They were never meant to eat any other kinds of food other than the grasses and the water that they lived on. But when you give them different foods, you change the whole composition of the meat, or the dairy, or the fruits, or the vegetables, or the grains, whatever it happens to be. Spend a little more money, get the quality food that you should have. And if you're doing everything right, you won't be eating that much anyway, so don't worry about it. It's still not going to cost you a lot of money. Anyway, yes, sir.
Could you comment on the implications of eating meat in terms of fat content and how it affects the plaque in your arteries?
Well, that's an interesting subject because it has sure changed. When a fellow named Ansel Keys did the, I think it was called the 7 or 9 country analysis back after World War II of which countries ate the less fat and which ate the most. Problem is he cherry-picked it and he didn't include everybody. And incidentally, K rations from World War II, was Ansel Keys for the K. So then he continued his nutrition work after the war. And they thought, well, it must be the fat that's causing these kinds of problems with the accumulation of the plaque in the arteries. Now, most of the studies say, hey, we have not been able to definitively assert that even saturated fat is responsible for the heart disease. It depends. Trans fats, no question. They're going to kill you. You're just being silly. If you check anything that has trans fats, the way you find out, you look at the label and you look at the fat content, you look at the monounsaturated, or you look at the other ones, and if there's still a gap, like there's 5 grams unaccounted for, that's probably a trans fat. So watch out for that kind of stuff. You just don't want that. But eating a moderate amount of fats with the fiber, with the other phytonutrients that we talk about, that'll keep the oxidation of what they call the LDL down. In other words, it becomes reactive in the body. And there's an area between the epithelial tissue on the inside of the artery and the basic artery itself, where that LDL gets inside, and if that oxidizes there, it causes inflammation and eventually kind of like a sore and builds up material. That's not good. So good food, for instance, a grass-fed steak has way more omega-3 fats, which are good for your heart, than does grain-fed meat, which has practically none. So if you have the good sources of these fats, and they're not just saturated fats, meat contains a lot of oleic acid, which is the same thing you find in olive oil. Which incidentally is my favorite oil of all, extra virgin olive oil. But moderation would be the key. Lots of plant-based foods to supply the antioxidants. Throw in your inner prime for the holes that you've created from the kind of food that you buy. And you'll start to see, and you should see a benefit. But get your blood tests done, see what's going on. Another food that I like a lot, and I gotta admit, it's not one we have, but I use aged garlic extract. Because there have been over 400 studies on its ability to lower LDL, raise HDL, influences blood pressure, influences immune function. That's good stuff. That's really good stuff. If you've got science-based information behind you, I'm all for you. And that's a good one. Yes, sir.
What about sugar in relationship to...
Sugar?
Yeah, in relationship to plaque.
I'm sorry, and with plaque?
Yeah, plaque in the arteries. Is there any step?
Well, again, the sugar doesn't cause plaque. Inflammation does. And sugar in excess causes inflammation, causes systemic inflammation throughout the body. So that's going to be part of the etiology of the development of the plaque. So if you can cut down on the sugar or use the natural plant sugars, fruit sugars, well, you're going to be far ahead. And if you're going to use a sugar, for instance, we know now that most chocolate can be pretty doggone good for you. The new study just came out showing how it reduces inflammation, but it has to be at least 70% cocoa solids. Why? The more cocoa, the less sugar. Just stands to reason. And between 70 and 80 is probably the sweet spot for chocolate. After 80, you probably need something, to kind of help with the bite. Yeah. And the other thing, eventually, because right now we don't know how you process the chocolate. If you process it with alkali, what they call Dutch chocolate, you're ruining all the different phytochemicals that are responsible for chocolate's goodness. So you want one that's non-alkali forming. And the companies so far have not released information on the amount of the good material based on how they process their chocolate. I think Mars has a process out where they are doing a special extraction where they can put up the phytochemical content at a high level. But so far you can't buy that as a consumer. You can get the percentage of cocoa, but you can't tell which ones are actually the most healthy.
So how do you research that?
You got to call the company, see if they've done any work on that. Or you can go online too and see if, just kind of type in, what would be the word, phytonutrient content? No, there's another term for the good benefits of chocolate, but I'll think about it. But a little research on what would work there. The highest amount, of course, would be cocoa powder, which is 100% cocoa, but you can see how bitter that is,
Yes.
you know, which is why.
Plant on that.
Pardon?
Philippines. The cocoa, yeah.
You do the little nose cone thing?
Yeah, it's like a hand grenade one.
Yeah, yeah. Well, they have something similar in Mexico. Kind of looks like a little nose cone thing. It's all pure sugar cane. Oh, sugar cane. No, that's sugar cane. Right. I'm all screwed up.
Cocoa.
Yes, you're right.
It's like a hand grenade, but it's long.
Ah,
And then there's a lot.
is that all cocoa? So you eat it with something that's a little sweeter?
Yeah, we had to put sugar cane.
Yeah, I get a little honey. I just get honey and I'll eat like an 86% cocoa, take a little bit of that, a little bit of
Like it.
honey. You got to do it.
Like it.
You got to cut it.
We have it, my mom used to grate it, and then we put coconut milk
Ah, good, good.
to melt it, and then we put sugar cane.
Well, it's kind of like, you know, also like in Mexico, the mole sauce, which is a chocolate sauce. They use a lot on the enchiladas and different types of food, and when they marinate their steaks and stuff.
In a tropical sauce.
Yeah, very good stuff. Very good stuff.
He doesn't like it because it's kind of
Doesn't like chocolate?
I like chocolate.
like chocolate. He likes
Well, milk chocolate is the worst.
Is this
Yeah, I like milk.
And white chocolate is even worse than milk chocolate, because white chocolate has no good stuff in it at all. It's just been totally screwed up. Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, I have a question. You mentioned when cooking rice about the coconut oil. Is it specifically?
A tablespoon.
Specifically coconut oil?
Well, actually, I guess you could put olive oil, but
Yeah.
you know, something that would coat it. Yeah, if you're boiling it, you can still use the olive and not totally ruin it, because it can only get, you know, so hot. Can't go to 3.
Once I use it, I cook it in the rice steamer, and once it's cooked, then I just drizzle.
Well, it's better to put, go ahead, it's different. Yeah, if you've got it in the liquid to begin with,
Okay.
that's what's coating the grain to make it less assimilable.
Okay.
nice
Yeah.
butter.
I'm allergic to coconut, so that's why I was wondering if it's
Yeah.
oil.
Yeah, you could also use something called MCT oil.
Okay.
Now that's derived from coconut, but it's not coconut.
Okay.
And most people can use that, and you could cook that with your grains or starches and have the same benefit. And there's not really much of a taste to that at all. And some people take MCT oil because it also helps to nourish the brain. Medium chain triglycerides are brain food. They produce a ketone effect in the body, so people on the ketone diet will find MCT oil to be very popular.
And then another question I had was about the aged garlic extract.
Mm-hmm.
Where can we get that? Is that
Kyolic is the only one that has that.
who is that?
Kyolic, Kyolic.
Yeah.
It's a Japanese company. It was actually, the process was invented by an American, and no Americans companies were interested in it, so we had to go to Japan to get them to do it. And it's been around for a while. But when you look at the studies like on PubMed, where they list all the stuff, PubMed, like, and you type in garlic, most of them will all talk about aged garlic, AGE, aged garlic extract. Or if you just type in that, you'll see all kinds of stuff.
So that's different from fermented garlic, the black garlic.
Mm-hmm. The fermented black garlic is also very good.
Very good.
Very good.
Very pricey. It's
Yeah, but this is not, you don't add this to your food,
Okay.
the garlic. It's just a
Yeah.
tablet or whatever, you know.
Okay.
Is
Okay.
it better than the fresh garlic?
Just regular garlic?
All garlic is good, but every time you do anything to garlic, you change its composition. If you just cut a garlic clove, it becomes different than what it was before. If you crush it, you create something different. And the allicin, which is one of the therapeutic parts of garlic, rapidly dissipates as soon as it's been cooked or crushed. If you're going to use fresh garlic, I would suggest you do it like many of the Italians do. You get a little bit of olive oil, you press the garlic right into the oil immediately so it's coated, and it stops that destructive process. But all garlic is good. Aged garlic extract is better for the heart and for the immune system. Yes, ma'am.
Is the aged garlic extract available in liquid form? I have a bag of
Yeah.
candy tablets.
Yeah, they have a squirt thing.
Okay.
I used to use that. I don't know why they still love me, but when my kids were little,